Welcome back to the center of it all. Today Mel is going to be teaching us how to make the perfect risotto, so grab a glass of wine and get comfortable because this is going to take a while.
Risotto is traditional Italian cooking at its best. Risotto is a method, not so much a recipe, and it requires respect. Join me right here at the stovetop this morning while I share everything I know about risotto. Before making risotto, one has to decide what kind to make: meat, seafood, poultry, or vegetable. And that requires making a homemade, well-seasoned corresponding stock: meat, seafood, poultry, or vegetable. The general rule is 6 cups of stock to 1 cup of risotto rice, and the stock must be kept steaming hot throughout the entire process to enable the risotto rice to release their starch, which is what makes risotto creamy. I'm making a chicken and mushroom risotto this morning, which means I've got 6 cups of steaming hot vegetable stock here. And I'm just going to put this to the back of the stove. And it's time to saute our add-ins, which are the little bits and morsels of food that typically get added to risotto near the end of the cooking process. I'm heating 4 tablespoons of olive oil in a nice wide bottomed skillet. Into that, I'm going to add a pound. Now I'm using small diced or small chopped chicken thighs. You can use tenders, but I kind of like the full flavor of the darker chicken thigh meat with the earthy flavor of the mushrooms. And that's 1 pound. I'm going to nicely season these with sea salt. And a peppercorn blend. And I'm going to turn my heat up a little, and I'm just going to saute these, stirring the chicken kind of frequently for about 2 or 3 minutes until it's almost cooked through. My chicken is almost cooked through. Still have some nice little pinky parts to it. Now it's time to add garlic. And I have 4 pressed garlic cloves here. 3 or 4 is all you need. You don't want to over garlic. You don't want to add your garlic at the beginning either, because if it starts to brown, it gets bitter. So we're going to stir in our garlic. And now I'm adding 8 ounces of mushrooms. I have baby bellas and white mushrooms today, and this is 8 ounces, or a half a pound of mushrooms to a pound of chicken. And I have them thinly sliced, and the caps are cut in half, so that when they cook down, this really is going to be little bits of food. Traditionally, risotto does not contain big chunks of meat or vegetables. I'm going to give this a really good stir, and I'm going to let this to cook steadily, saute, but not over high heat, until the mushrooms have lost most of their volume and almost all of their moisture. And that's going to take about 5 or 6 minutes. There are no 2 ways to make risotto. You're either making it right or you're not making risotto. Don't make substitutions, don't take shortcuts, don't deviate from the recipe. I'm adding 4 tablespoons of olive oil to the bottom of a risotto pot over medium heat. I'm adding a 1.5 cups of finely diced yellow or sweet onion. I'm going to saute this, stirring it almost constantly until the onion is tender and translucent and really, really cooked and just beginning to show signs of browning right around the edges of the pot. And that's going to take about 4 to 5 minutes. It's been about 6 minutes, and if I leave these onions cook any longer, they're going to start to brown. There's little bits of brown around the outside of the pan. And now I'm going to stir in my rice, and this is 1 pound of arborio rice. I'm going to tell you that in measurements, it's a very generous 2 cups, but if you have a kitchen scale, now is the time to use it. Weigh your rice. This is 1 pound. I'm going to give this a really good stir, and I'm not going to let it out of my sight. I'm going to stir and stir and stir and stir for 2 to 3 minutes. What I want to have happen here is all of the grains of rice need to be coated in the oil, and you want them to just ever so slightly start to toast in the bottom of this pot. This has been about 2 minutes, and you have to feel this, that the rice it's almost wanting to stick a little to the bottom of the pan, and you don't want anything to scorch. So now we're going to add 1/4 cup of white wine. We're going to deglaze all of this. And at this point, there's no liquid. The alcohol's all evaporated out of there. It's time to start adding our stock. And for the first round, what you're going to add is just enough to cover the top of the rice. So that's depending on the size of your pot. Now in this pot, it is typically about 1.5 cups. The top of my rice is covered. Now I'm going to start stirring. And if the camera can get it, you'll see. Typically risotto, they tell you to stir in one direction and keep going in the same methodical direction over and over. And that works well. But I don't think the rice really knows the difference. And I'm left-handed, so it always looks backwards. I'm going to say about 3 to 4 minutes until the rice has absorbed all of the liquid in this pot on this first round. I'm turning off the heat on my stock again because I want it steaming. I don't want it simmering or boiling. If you're even tempted to think that the heat of the stock doesn't matter, if you add room temperature or cold stock, the rice will not release its starch and it will seize, and you will never ever achieve a creamy risotto. Now on this day in history, it's been about 2.5 minutes, and the bottom of my pan is dry of liquid. So for the next round, I'm going to add 1 cup of stock. And I'm going to repeat this process of cooking and regulating the heat and not rushing the risotto until all of the liquid is absorbed. and I've got a real creamy dish of rice going here. I'm going to turn my heat down to low for just a moment because it's time now to stir in the add-ins, whatever meat or seafood or sauteed vegetables or combinations you have. And as I'm backtracking and thinking of things to tell you, and it's best to add your garlic. If you're adding garlic to risotto, it is best to add it to your add-ins, not directly to the risotto. So my add-ins are stirred in. Now it's time for me to taste this. Not so much for seasonings, but to taste the degree to which the rice is cooked. Almost perfect, but not quite. I'd like mine to cook a little bit more to the tooth. I'm going to add a half cup more stock. Turn my heat back up just a little bit. Keep stirring. Make sure you start with 6 cups of stock to make this, because in the end you could add up to 5.5, 6 cups of stock. And so far we've used 5. Let's taste. That's what I'm talking about. To the tooth, perfect. Now I'm going to stir in, for my taste, I'm going to start with 4 tablespoons of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese and 4 tablespoons of butter. And I'm going to turn my heat down low, and I'm going to stir until these are melted in. Now what it's time to do, turn off the heat, cover the lid, let it sit for 2 to 3 minutes, and we're going to the table to eat. Risotto requires love and patience. It can't be made in advance, and cheating just breaks the spell. Risotto requires careful attention and methodical stirring. Risotto's done when it's done, and only the cook knows when it's done. But when it's done right, it's a meal fit for a king or a queen. For these and all of my recipes, just go to my website.
Thank you, Mel, for that lesson on how to make the perfect risotto. This looks great, and you can definitely smell the Parmesan cheese. It's nice and it's creamy. It tastes great. Good job, Mel. Another great meal here. Coming up next, we'll be taking a look at a new sports center that's coming to Center County.